Should be live. We're live. I think we're live. Are we live? Come on in, everybody. We know you're out there. It's early where I'm at. It's mid-afternoon, or mid-morning, I should say, where Russ and Glenn are. It's still early in the morning where Charles is. So come on in. It's time for Comics by Night. We see you out there. I know you're there. Come on in. Come on in. We'll be here. This is a great episode today. We're going to talk about the art of collaboration. And how
collaboration.
Exactly. And how great it is to be working with people and how that goes. So welcome to Comics by Night, folks. Here's the opening. As soon as I scroll down to it, we'll get right to it. And let's see. There it is. Here we go.
What was that? This is not a charade. We need total concentration. Now, once again, this time, with theory.
How dare you?
Just so we get that out of the way.
I'm so glad it's put together in that way because the starry night bit at the start makes me want to go to sleep. And I just get all comfortable. And then I get woken up by the chicken and a bomb. And it's like, oh my God, I'm awake now.
And then put back to sleep by the Greta.
That's all. Well,
yeah, it's completely blown away by her.
Can Greta ever put anyone?
How dare you?
Yeah,
absolutely.
How dare you give me $10 million?
Yeah,
exactly. My own private jet while I fly around talking about how much we need to save the environment. Actually, I saved this on purpose for any time we want to talk about Marvel because I've got a whole clip here.
How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
That's the whole clip.
It's just gotta be
from the extremist perspective.
You know,
just seemed fitting to me.
If I wasn't married and she was 18, I'll tell you.
That sounds as bad as Biden. Except at least you're legal.
I'm not quite sure what you mean there.
She's hot.
Is she?
Yeah, global warming.
Yeah, let's go for it.
That must be what it is. Must be what it is.
Look, everybody's entitled to be an idiot.
You know, if I was in parts of Brazil, it would be 7 o'clock, not 5 o'clock in the morning. Did you know that?
Well, pretend that you're in Brazil then.
Because they stick so far out into the Atlantic, they're 2 time zones closer to you guys over there.
2 times closer to sensible.
Yeah.
I mean, don't forget. We tell the world when to eat, don't we? Because it's Greenwich Mean Time when it starts, and that's in England. So
exactly.
So we tell the world what to do. Even now, even though we're being cancelled and everybody hates Churchill and our history, we tell you guys when to eat and when to go to sleep.
You know, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about empire and colonialism.
You don't know anything about empire, being an American.
Well,
only recent empire.
But I'll allow you.
I live in the Empire State. Anyway, I was doing some research, and I bumped into a quote from the president of Liberia in the early 50s. Okay,
as you do.
And this person said, the reason we're so backward is because we never had the advantage of being a colony. All the other African countries had the advantage of being a former colony, so they had education and infrastructure and institutions, but poor Liberia had to start from scratch.
Oh dear.
All right.
So they wanted invading then. They're blaming us for not invading them now instead
exactly,
of invading them.
Exactly.
Invade, don't invade.
Right. But we didn't colonize anywhere. We modernized everywhere.
That's my point.
Yeah, and we had Manifest Destiny too. So hey.
Yeah.
Anyway, comics.
Comics.
Same thing. We're all just out looking to collaborate.
Yes.
Well, surely that's what an empire is.
A lot of collaboration.
That's the way you build one. If you're Stan Lee.
Tell that to Putin.
Yes.
Anyway,
Comic book empires. There you go. Get the right people in. Get the right job done.
Comic book empires. Yeah, okay. We'll talk
That's a
comic
fairly
history.
good segue. I think we did that quite well, me and Charles.
We'll talk comic history in a minute about there's history. There's a lot of history there. Welcome to Comics by Night. This is Comics by Night for the 30th of September, 2022. I'm your host, Randy Zimmerman. I'm a longtime alternative and independent comics creator, producer, publisher. Done just about everything in this business you can imagine, except for work for the bigger companies because I couldn't get along with anybody. But it's just me, or so I'm told. But retailed for over 10 years, did my own newspaper for 10 years, done just about everything, like I said, and real happy to be here in podcasting and doing this show. Also joining me today is Mr. Glenn B. Fleming. Glenn, introduce yourself.
Hi everybody, my name's Glenn Fleming. I'm a writer, artist and publisher. I spent most of my career in graphics, which is 40 years and about 39 years too long. I should have been following my passion and drawing and stuff like that, although I did a lot of that in that time. But I recently published this book, which is relevant for this show, which is Jack Kirby, Personal Journey, Words and Pictures, which details my 2 visits to the home of Jack Kirby in the late 80s and early 90s. And with that, which you can get from me, is this DVD of me actually speaking with Jack in his studio. I'm about to publish the 2nd edition of my character Hatch, which will be coming out soon. And I also publish Comics Unlimited magazine, which is a 100-page quarterly magazine about comics.
Now I want to point out to everybody out there listening that we're, for whatever reason now, according to the software, the StreamYard arguing with Facebook. Facebook starts off all of these shows with all of the feeds locked down into private. So I just made mine public, so you can now reach me over on my Facebook page. But we really suggest you watch us over on YouTube on the Indie Comics Network, so that you are able to see us and be able to chat as well correctly. So please, if you haven't already subscribed to the Indie Comics Network, go over there and subscribe. We're getting into a whatever it is, if it's a glitch or Facebook being what they are, or StreamYard not being able to connect with Facebook correctly, it's becoming a hassle. So please go over to the Indie Comics Network, watch us on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, etc., etc. And if you're seeing this later in the archives, make sure you leave a comment below about the show. Every conversation, every comment that you leave helps us with the algorithm, even if it's negative. So you can dislike us all you want. It's up to you. Also joining us today is Mr. Russ Leach. Russ, introduce yourself.
Yes, hello. I'm a comic book artist from the UK. That's it, really. Much like Glenn, I've had a 30-odd year career in design, marketing, advertising, and all other kind of stuff, art direction, and even online application development. But there you go. That was another life. And since 2010, I followed my dream and went for being a comic book artist. And fortunately, in the last 10 years, I've been able to work on brands like Doctor Who, Ben 10, worked for Marvel, and currently on Batman, as well as my own book, Only Death Can Save Us, which is to be published to the general public, because this was done by crowdfunding. I self-published this, but it's going out via New Haven Press for Christmas. New Haven Publishing graphic novels for Christmas. So that's my little journey in a minute. There you go.
There you are. Also joining us today is Mr. Charles Santino. Charles, introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm living my dream, which is to be on this stream.
There you go. Thank you.
I'm a writer, producer, art director, packager. Been doing it since the 80s. This is Rammer. This is my character, published by Morcosia. Master Thief in a Future Police State. It's available now everywhere. Second issue is going to come out pretty soon. Started with Marvel back in the 80s doing Conan, and that's going to be reprinted yet again in a series, an omnibus that they're doing right now. 700 pages, 140 of which are mine.
Huge book.
It's only $125.
How many are yours?
There are 7 issues, so 140 pages out of 700.
700? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Those omnibuses are nice, but you can't. My biggest complaint about them is that you can't read them on the toilet.
No, plus I'm not sure that it won't. The supports in my house can keep the floor from crashing through with.
Exactly.
I mean these gigantic tomes. I guess it's a good thing I've only got one. Stories in one. I don't know where I'd put more than one.
I've got a retailer friend of mine that's got 3 omnibuses on hold for me that he's waiting for me to run up and purchase.
Who did the art on your stories?
Val Semix, who did the Demon as well, and Lobo, and
oh wow,
co-creator with Steve Gerber of Howard the Duck.
No, that's Val Mayrick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's two Vals.
I get the Vals mixed up.
There are two male Vals in comics.
Oh,
those are the 2 of them.
I hate it when I flub a name like that.
Who would have thunk it? Two male Vals in all of comics. Two. What are the chances?
2 Vals, 1 Sal, though.
One Sal. Yeah.
It's only 1 Sal, 1 John. Well, a lot of Johns, but
our pal
only
Sal.
1 John Buscema. Anyway.
Unfortunately, there's several Leaches, and I'm not the top one. A guy called Gary. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, that's only with a last name and not a.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Gary Leach isn't here now, is he? So you must be one.
Yeah. Maybe I've taken the crown.
Yeah.
The king is dead. Long live the king.
Yeah, that's right.
Just take it. Yeah. Prince Leach.
Formerly known as Prince.
Formerly known as Prince. I posted that meme on Facebook. And I got a picture of Charles playing a guitar. This is the artist formerly known as Prince.
I thought the one where they had him with some kind of a half shaved head, like laying down. It was like spends 40 years doing nothing, unemployed, is now king. So that was quite good.
Well, they were praising him somewhere for being such a great businessman, and I thought, well, wait a minute. How could you not be a great businessman if you wanted to, if you're him? Because who's not going to do business with you on your terms?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. No, it's a very weird situation. We're going off piste here, but it's very. I'm not
as
much
we
of a
usually do. Yeah.
Not much of a royalist myself, but as I've grown older, I do appreciate how the structure of things work, and getting rid of them probably on balance isn't a good idea. But I'm not a lover of accident of birth. Put it that way.
I think it's the peripheral that bothers me about the royalty.
Yeah, it's all the peripherals, exactly.
It's all the dukes and earls that nobody's ever heard of that are born into vast wealth, etc.
They need to go.
Everybody deserves a title.
Yeah.
Somewhere down there.
Yeah. And plenty of people get called things all the time.
We do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We've all got certain titles.
Right.
Join in on the chat, guys. I know you're out there. I can see how many people are listening. We're here to talk about comics and collaboration today. So don't be afraid to add into the discussion. We appreciate everybody out there. We'd love to hear from you. So let us know you're alive. And at the very least, hit that like button, hit that love button. Let us know that you appreciate what we do. Because we really like doing this kind of stuff, especially when we're talking about comics history and the nuts and bolts of doing what we love to do. So we've all collaborated at one point or another in our careers, right?
Well, I think you're always collaborating unless you are writing, drawing, the pencils, inking, coloring, lettering. If you're doing all, I mean, then you're still collaborating. You're self-publishing, right?
Yeah.
So you're only collaborating with the audience.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't be on this panel, really, should I? I'll go.
No.
I'll see you later.
Get out of here.
Get out.
Go eat lunch.
Brunch.
Anyway.
Go get yourself an avocado.
Just
Glenn.
kidding. Just kidding.
Do they have avocados in the north?
Oh, yeah.
What's avocado?
There you go. Guacamole.
It's a color there.
Yeah. It's a color.
I know. It was
Isn't it a shade of green?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. My wife's part Mexican, so can't help but know what an avocado is.
Well, she should be on a DC cover. Oh, I didn't say that.
Oh, but
Sorry, guys. I love you, but you dropped the ball there.
I posted on Facebook last week. Last Saturday was Tamale Day,
Aha.
where we all get together. Monica's, and this is going way off topic, but
I'm looking forward to when it's Brit Day and all the comics can have pictures of us eating fish and chips.
little tea.
That'd be great.
Yeah. But Monica's grandfather used to be known as Tamale Pete. And he would go through because I'm just south of Flint, just barely south of Flint, 2 miles out of the the old safe water zone, or into the safe water zone. But Monica's grandfather used to be known as Tamale Pete, and him and his wife would make 300 dozen tamales like every weekend. And back then you did it all by hand. Now we've got a little hand press machine that'll make it for us. But they used to spread the cornmeal onto the husk and boil them, all weekend. And he'd take them Monday, Tuesday into the shops and sell them by the dozen.
Wow.
And just walk in and hit, because they had the, they're like the Colonel. They had the secret recipe.
Did he eat all his profits and come back with $2 and because he'd eaten them all?
No.
So what specifically is a tamale?
A tamale is cornmeal wrapped around shredded and spiced, usually shredded and spiced pork.
Oh.
That's wrapped in a corn husk and boiled for about 3 hours.
Okay.
It's a Mexican standard, pretty much. Actually, South American standard. It's not just Mexico, but everybody has a particular formula because there's no. It's like a homegrown recipe. Everybody has their own specific way. So when we were making tamales, while Monica's grandfather was still alive, he would come by all the time and watch what we were doing and taste the meat and tell us what was wrong with it. And he'd supervise. That was his job. We got him on video he lived to be 106. Wow. But
I should eat more tamales.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, he also he had stories too, because he moved up from, and I'm sorry, we're getting way off topic. But
we haven't been on topic yet.
Well, I've been trying to steer it that way, and here I'm talking about everything else. Him and his wife come up from Mexico for the auto plants here in Flint, and raised a couple of generations through the auto plant. Monica's dad went through the big Chevy plant, and her grandfather went through all of the plants because he was like me. He couldn't get along with anybody. And back in those days, he could tell your supervisor off and tell him to go take a flying leap, walk across the street and get a job. So he didn't put up with a lot of crap. I mean, it was hard work, don't get me wrong. But Monica's grandfather was part of the sit-down strike that ended up forming the United Auto Workers and brought fairer working conditions to the workers, because at that point they were literally working in sweat boxes under pretty close to slave labor conditions. So,
history.
But anyway, he had to collaborate too. He had to work with eventually he worked with everybody. So, sorry, back on topic. Here we go. But needless to say, the tamale recipe that we do is like crack. We give people a dozen, and then they come back asking for 2, and it gets pretty crazy.
Put the price up.
That's right. Absolutely.
Market demands.
Yeah. I think Charles is correct when he's, just to get back on topic, when he says that everything's a collaboration, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everything's I mean, at the very least, you collaborate with a printer.
Yeah.
And then you got to collaborate with the post office if you're doing it all yourself. So there's always the whole core of collaboration is just simply that you have to rely on other people for certain aspects of the production.
And your crowdfunding platform, if you're using one of those,
exactly.
you have to work with them. Yeah,
exactly.
And
So, for instance, I was very close on Only Death Can Save Us. I was very, very close to doing the whole thing myself. And I got a friend of mine, Rick, who's a very experienced writer, to help me out with the dialogue, because I just felt it needed something else. And then also I got an editor involved. So even though I did pretty much all of the creative donkey work, as it were, I did get other people involved to give it that proper sheen, and also to make sure it went out in an appropriately good standard.
Even a proofreader is a collaborator.
Exactly. So you're never truly on your own. It's just how many hats you decide to wear.
We often mention on this show Stanley Kubrick, and he said that when he first started out, he realized that on every picture somebody had to be a boss. It might as well be him. So, but talk about collaboration. I mean, he had a script. He was in total control. But some of the best bits of his movies were improvisations. Malcolm McDowell singing in the Rain, that came out of an improvisation. So Kubrick was the boss, but he allowed the collaboration of his actors to bring things. Certainly Peter Sellers, I'm sure a lot of that stuff just came out. That was him collaborating with Sellers and saying, do your thing.
I think Sellers' greatest thing was on Dr. Strangelove, when he stands up and shouts, "Mein Führer, I can walk." I think that wasn't scripted, I don't think.
No, and that's a perfect example of Kubrick said about that. He said, well, that's really, it goes beyond even the satire of the movie. It's just so absurd, and yet one of his dictums was, is it interesting? Okay, so it's not realistic. It might not even be realistic in the satirical setting of that movie. It might be beyond that, but yet he thought it was so great, we're keeping that.
Well, the interesting story about Dr. Strangelove was slim pickings, wasn't it? Because Peter Sellers was supposed to play that part of the pilot. And Peter Sellers was so cheesed off with doing everything that 3,000 times like Kubrick likes, that how many characters? He was the squadron leader guy, he was the president, and he was Doctor. So he's going to play 4 parts in that film.
I think he did play 4 parts in that film.
No, just 3. He was supposed to play. He was supposed to play 4, but he only got paid being one actor.
For one,
yeah.
Save a little money.
He allegedly broke his ankle and couldn't do the Slim Pickens part, but that turned out to be a genius move, because Kubrick didn't tell Slim Pickens it was a comedy. So Slim Pickens plays it straight. And it works because everything else is a joke, isn't it? But he's really serious, and he thought that it was a straight movie about the end of the world, So he plays it straight, and everybody else is having a laugh.
I can see Slim Pickens reading that script. I get to do what at the end? Okay.
Yeah.
And they had to change that because Kennedy got shot, didn't they? Because he says of a great time in Dallas, they have to change it to Vegas or something.
Yeah.
I told you guys, no horsing around on the airplane.
Yeah. And there's also the end where that's never been seen in the footage, I don't think, because at the end, when the bombs are going off, when it finishes, there's another scene where George Scott gets a cake from the buffet spread and slaps it in the president's face, and they all have a big cake fight and throwing food, but they didn't want to do that again because of Kennedy. It was like he was being hit in the head type of thing, so they cut that scene as well.
Wow. Yeah, and they sued Failsafe.
The
movie Failsafe.
Yeah.
And had its release delayed until after Dr. Strangelove.
Because that was played straight. So
yeah.
Both of them amazing movies. So
yeah, fabulous. Yeah.
It's like
wasn't Failsafe Sinatra?
What's that?
Was Failsafe Sinatra? What was the film?
No.
I'm watching Failsafe and I'm like, that's the guy from Genie. What's he doing in this movie? Larry Hagman was.
Yes. Yeah, it wasn't Sinatra. Was it Henry Fonda, the star of Failsafe?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen that movie.
Now, as a writer, I have to collaborate every time I make a comic. I can't do most of what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, if I'm the boss, as I have been on very few projects, and I am on Rammer, I'd like to think that it's all me, but it's not. It can't be. It's got more of me in it than most projects I've worked on Rammer, but I have to hire an artist, and typically my artists are doing the penciling, the inking, and the coloring. Somebody else is doing the lettering. But again, the artist will bring something, show me some art based on a full script. They're working from a full script, and yet every time I see the art for the first time, I'm astonished at what I didn't tell them to do that they did.
Yeah.
One example of it, this is kind of something funny, but it happens. I have told every one of my artists I love silhouettes. Throw me a silhouette every 10 pages or so. It's going to be less work for you. and it always looks great, right?
Yeah.
And I never get it. And I'm working with a new artist, giving him a 4-page tryout. Didn't mention silhouettes to him because I just got sick of mentioning silhouettes to artists and never getting it. And on page 3 of the 4-page story, there's a silhouette. And I was like, and it worked so great because this particular character, and I told him what the character should look like, and he gave me a completely different design. And the character has a very interesting coat and hat that make him completely identifiable in silhouette. So when we see him in the silhouette, and it's only, I think, the second or third panel that we've ever seen him in, he's new to the story, he's completely identifiable in silhouette. It was just such an intelligent and great thing. And when you're working with somebody else who's smart and doesn't have to be told everything, you're going to get things that you didn't ask for that you're going to love. And that's the best aspect of collaboration is when you can just let it go. Let the person do their thing. Collaboration is like a marriage. And every collaboration is different, just like every marriage is different. Every relationship you have is different. And creative relationships are all going to be different. And you've got to figure out how that relationship with that particular collaborator is going to work.
That's what was the part of the genius of Ridley Scott, wasn't it, in Blade Runner, when at the end, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe, that little speech he does, that little monologue. Rutger Hauer wrote that, and the end script was about 5 minutes long of him pontificating about everything, and Rutger Hauer didn't feel that that fitted the character of Roy, so he wrote those few lines, and apparently or allegedly he told Ridley Scott in discussion about the scene, when they were going to shoot it, but he said, "I'm not going to tell you what I've written. Just shoot it. Just let me do it." And that's what they did.
That
worked so well. Yeah,
that worked big time. Yeah,
it's just fabulous. Yeah,
just trusting your talent.
But and another funny. You'll know this. A funny collaboration by necessity, as it were, was when Harrison Ford had diarrhea, didn't he, in the shooting of Raiders, and he was supposed to have this big fight with a guy with a sword, and he kept running off to the loo, and they were getting behind time because Harrison was ill, and Harrison said, "Stephen, why don't I just shoot the guy?" So they did that, and then I've seen an outtake from Second Direction where he shoots the guy, and then he runs to the loo.
That's lauded as one of the best comical moments in the whole film.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, doesn't the crowd around the guy who gets shot cheer?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Yes,
we're done for the day. Yeah. Sad.
We never liked him.
But it was such an obvious thing to do as well.
Yeah. And Steven Spielberg said he had, I don't know which famous director he quoted from way back. He said he did this thing and he just ripped the script up and threw it up in the air. And he was back on track. He was 3 days behind at the time, and he was back on track again because they didn't have to shoot this scene that was going to take all day, you know.
Huge choreographed fight scene. Yeah.
Yeah, there were plenty of fights in that movie.
Yeah. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
Great film. Back to comics.
Yeah.
Actually, back to Failsafe. There's a Dan O'Herlihy that's got top billing. Then Walter Matthau. Then a little farther down, it's Henry Fonda and Larry Hagman.
Wow.
So, just to add that little bit of trivia.
Just to finish it off.
Matthau's got second billing on that.
Wow.
I didn't even remember him being in the film, but it's really a good movie though.
So who would be the best collaboration in comics? I
think we know the answer to that.
Yeah,
question.
but I don't think you can. I think it depends on. It's like music. I think it depends on a lot of things, and I think you probably know who my favorite would be, but you can't really pin it down, can you? Because there's so like Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, you know, that kind of thing. I think you'd be.
That was one work. You know, Watchmen, just 12 issues.
Still
that
counts,
doesn't match.
doesn't it?
Oh, everything counts. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, you got a three-way with you got Stan, Jack, and Joe Sinnott. I mean, you mentioned we mentioned Stan and Jack all the time, but when we add Joe Sinnott to the mix,
yeah,
I'd have loved to work with Joe Sinnott.
Yeah,
yeah, he lived not too far from me, and he used to come to a local convention in Albany at least twice a year, and he was the sweetest guy you could possibly imagine. Just a great guy, and talk about old school values and work ethic, and yeah, the guy was amazing, and when he started putting his magic over Jack's pencils,
yeah, I'd love to
see him. You couldn't do the amount of work that he did without a work ethic. So.
No, that's what was going through my head. Yeah, I mean that he's had one inspiration that hits me. It's not just about the art or the writing or the finishing. Mm-hmm. It's the nature of the artist as well. Yeah. So I look at people like the Buscemers and like Joe Sinnott and Jack, and as well as that, some of the guys over here from the 2000 AD crowd as well, mm-hmm. and just the amount of effort, the sheer energy that they threw at their work, and the amount of how prodigious they were, the amount of work that they threw out, it's like that really gets me as well. That makes me think, wow, it's not just about the creative content.
Yeah,
it's their sheer physical force
because
making it happen.
When you look at these guys, they were all, I mean, if they lived, obviously if they died, but they all carried on working, didn't they, into their 80s, 90s. Look at Ron Smith on Judge Dredd. How old was Ron Smith when he died? He was about 94, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was like 70 odd when he was drawing Judge Dredd. Yeah.
That's right, yeah. So that's like 10 years after most mortals retire.
Yeah,
he's knocking out that.
Which just shows you that comics are timeless.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of that.
Look at Jack's career.
You got to look at like ageism, which there is a lot of.
Oh yeah, too much, especially now. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but comics doesn't work that way.
Yeah. No.
You don't have an exclusive right to creativity because you're under 35.
Yeah.
And that's just not the way.
Yeah, I would like to think somebody reading something I wrote, not knowing anything about me, would not have any idea what my age is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would like to think that. I might be completely wrong about that, but I don't know. And getting back to that work ethic, a lot of those guys grew up in the Depression.
Yes,
and that really formed their experience and because my parents' generation were of that generation, and a lot of them took that attitude to the grave, the rest of their rest of their lives.
But don't forget that there was the Depression that was hit by a war. on the back end of it as well. So, it's like a double whammy, wasn't it? So you got all these people scrambling around, literally just for a loaf of bread. And then when they got to be 25, if they were 25, they were suddenly on D-Day, weren't they? And
that's why it's slightly disconcerting and a little bit annoying, to be honest. If you know anything about history, if you know anything about our recent past, as in the last 100 years or so, to hear the media say this is the worst since the war, the worst since the Depression, and you just think, put it into perspective. Yes, there's some terrible things happening, and we've got some problems, okay, but this is not the same. It's not you, and surely purely on the human suffering perspective, it's not the same, and it won't be the same because we have other tools in place to make sure it isn't the same. Doesn't mean you can't have a bad downturn. Doesn't mean you can't have things go wrong, okay, and that people will suffer. But it just, that World War, straight after exactly that, 2 world wars and in between a depression, just like that's a serious period of time. And exactly as Charles is saying, it created people. It created a special kind of person who had so much to give, both to society, but also creatively as well, which is, people like Jack and what have you being spawned from that. And I think is what sometimes we miss in current writing, is that life experience. And bizarrely, this is much like the same arguments about who should play a certain character and should they look or be exactly like the character they're playing, which is rubbish. It's the same with writers. You don't have to be young to write for young people. You just have to write clearly and well and put yourself in the positions. And unfortunately, some of the current writers seem to turn up and say, "Hello, fellow kids, I'm just like you." And their writing isn't. It's not. It just doesn't have that vein of what the writers from the 50s, 60s, 70s had. It doesn't quite connect. And I think that some of that is possibly down to just an easier life than people had back in the day.
I think you're right. Yeah. In modern comics nowadays, they don't even look at talent. They look at what you are. Well, in order to write a character specifically,
that's entertainment.
Gay characters or gay writers write gay characters, and ethnic people writing the same ethnicity. That's a complaint from Christopher.
That's because people are looking at what's on the outside instead of what's on the inside.
Yep.
And you should be able to connect with people no matter who they are. You should be able to learn about other people's lives and about their experiences and about their cultures. But you should be able to do that from a perspective of character. You've got to find that out through their personal story rather than all the stuff that's on the outside.
This is what we're saying. We're saying about experience in the way that it's that old adage, isn't it? The fool can't play the wise man. So us on this panel here are far more qualified, in my opinion, to write about young people, because I was young once. We all were. And young people can't write about older people because they haven't got there yet.
They can if they're really creative, they can observe.
Yeah, of course. But I just like I said, not from experience.
No. Some of the collaborations that I find most interesting are the ones where we're talking previously about people who got along well, but there are great collaborations where people just couldn't stand each other's guts.
Yeah.
And yet they managed to produce these masterpieces.
That's their genius and professionalism, isn't it? They spend only to the last second of the need to spend with that person for whatever reason. But they still produced that fantastic work. As we said before about the Beatles on Abbey Road, they were all I won't say hated each other, but they were far from friends. And so what did they do? They went into the studio and produced what I consider to be their best work. So, there's a respect, there's a professionalism, there's a creativity, there's talent, there's all this kind of thing. And they put that record out and it's the best one.
My understanding is that Chris Claremont and John Byrne didn't get along.
Yeah, I was going to say about
Again, it's like a marriage, like we said earlier. They probably had a small honeymoon period there, And,
But don't
then
forget-
over a period of time, they got to grate upon each other. And,
But
and
as much as I love John
things.
Byrne,
Yeah.
he probably grates a lot of people the wrong way.
Yeah, don't forget though that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby weren't exactly bosom buddies. They weren't.
No.
They weren't unfriendly towards each other. It's not that they didn't like each other, but they weren't best friends.
No.
Well,
But when you read the soapboxes, you think they live together, don't you? You know, and they don't.
That's the attitude that Stan wanted to promote.
Yes.
Though, was that everybody was it was a tight ship. Everybody.
Well,
was
and Jack said that you got to remember the age difference between them. When Jack was doing Captain America with Joe Simon for Marvel, you know, Stan Lee is this snot-nosed, obnoxious kid who's the publisher's nephew who comes in and is taking over and inserting himself into everything, and Jack Kirby's like, who the hell is this little?
And there was only a 5-year difference.
Yeah, exactly.
But it counts.
The story is he ratted Jack and Joe out to
yes.
He followed them, didn't he? Apparently,
Yep.
Because they were over at DC doing Boy Commandos and Newsboy Legion, getting about double of what Martin Goodman was paying them by the page.
Yeah, and Martin Goodman screwed him out of the royalties for Captain America.
Yeah.
Profit sharing, that supposedly. Well, Goodman promised profits to a lot of people over the years who never got them, including Ditko on Spider-Man.
Yeah. And again, it was, you know, verbal contract and not a physical contract that you can make hold up in court.
Exactly.
I'll pay. Just keep working. Just keep.
We'll be fine.
We'll
Trust me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And there's a collaboration between, you know, the talent and the corporation. You know, that's another type of collaboration. It's a collaboration. It can be a strange one.
Yeah.
Seems like a lack of collaboration there between Goodman and his creatives. Yeah.
And that type of thing still happens today. You know,
it does,
get into a friendly agreement with somebody that turns out not to be your friend. So
I think I think the one thing you've got to learn from the last 100 years of comics is get a contract.
Yeah,
okay,
you would think so, but some people.
That's the thing. Get yourself a contract.
Well,
get
just
a set agreement.
Just this week, I got a contract for Marvel. Okay,
Ooh.
I haven't worked for them in 30 years. Okay, but I asked for a complimentary copy of this Conan omnibus because I don't even want to buy my own stuff for $125.
Fair enough.
So I reached out to them, and they said, "Yeah, you just need to fill out all this paperwork, including a contract that says that what I did for them was work for hire." Yeah, fine, I have no problem with that. I think I signed one at the time, but I'll sign another one. And there's there's an incentive plan. I was like, wait a minute. I can get paid on this stuff. You've reprinted it how many times, and now you're telling me if I sign this, I can get some money, some more money. I was like, okay, that's great.
They've reprinted it. Dark Horse has reprinted it.
Yes,
It's gone through a number of Well, there's a lot of questionability now about the back of the check work for hire contract.
Then that's what I signed.
Yeah. And
well, it wasn't on the back of a check this time, but it was a piece of paper saying everything was work for hire. So the character that you created for that Conan story, who was in that one story and maybe even died, during the story, if we make a movie and he's in it, too bad.
Wow.
Let me know when that comes out, because I'd like to add to your personal fortune by buying it.
Couple of pennies. It's coming out next month.
Yeah.
I think it is number here it is. Hold on. I think it is omnibus number. It might be number 9. Yeah.
They got to get all that stuff out before the end of the year. So there might be a number of Conan omnibuses that suddenly pop up.
This one's number 9, and my name is on the cover as well as a bunch of other people.
Howard went through.
People that worked on it.
Went through and pulled that contract, so they don't have the rights to Conan anymore after the first of the year.
I think expanding on that concept of making sure that you have a contract is also there's been a lot of screaming about creators getting their rights and creators getting what's due and all the rest of it. I think if it's clear on the contract from the word go, then there's not an issue. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, I don't have any problem. I mean, I was drawing Doctor Who Adventures, and we were very rarely allowed to use any of the villains from the show. So every issue I did, all 24 issues, the villains or the characters were all made up by the writer and myself. Okay, we made the lot up. And I don't have a problem with that belonging to the BBC.
So you have to give them up. You've got no rights to those characters.
I've got no rights to them at all. I just drew everything.
And you obviously went in knowing that.
And I went in knowing that because I signed a contract and went, yeah, fine, it's work for hire. I get my page rate. That's part of my job. That's part of what I always wanted to do as a kid, okay, was draw and get paid for it because it was good enough, okay? Yeah, sure. So there has to be you can't just scream and shout about everything that corporates do. They were providing me with money to live with. It was a job, okay? And I was enjoying it, and I signed the contract, and that was it. So if they then make £1 million out of some bizarre little character that I made out of the pages, then fine. You know, I'll just say, well, I did that, and I get the kudos for it, but I don't get paid anything. But I knew what I was getting into. I can't, after the fact, get upset about it.
Unless you created Thanos.
Unless you created Thanos, it's slightly different. Slightly different. And I think the relationship that Starlin would have had with Marvel would have been slightly different than my relationship with Panini and the BBC and Marvel and DC. So you know,
at the time he did Thanos, there was no idea there would ever be movies.
No, exactly.
And there weren't even creator rights for another 10 years.
No. So really, they wouldn't even have written that into a contract. So and I think big characters like that, there is some difference to be had, and obviously like the environment they were in and how they were working with each other. But I think now there's a lot of people in retrospect look back and go, oh, this is terrible. But it's like, well, if you're getting paid for the job, you're getting paid for the job.
Yeah,
I'm not suggesting that creators should be ripped off. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying be aware.
But what a great character. You know what? I read that stuff as it came out, and there are, I would say maybe 5 or 6 times in the last 50 years that I've been reading comics that my mind was blown, and that was certainly one of them. And getting back to collaborations, he was not happy with the inking. The reason he left Captain Marvel, he was not happy on the inking on the end of that. Thanos saga, Captain Marvel 33, which was Klaus Janson did the inks on that, and which I think are beautiful. But he hated it, and he said, "That's it. I'm out of here. I'm not happy with what you're doing."
I'll be honest. I'm not a Klaus Janson fan.
Janson's a little heavy-handed on his ink.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't doubt his skill and his ability and respect him as an artist. I just don't like it. Just doesn't do anything for me. So
that's a real that taste is very subjective.
Yes, it is.
And apparently it was in Jim's mouth.
And he did one more issue. He did one more issue, a standalone story, number 34, the Living Bomb. That guy, and that was it. And he was out.
Love that story. I remember getting that when I was a kid. I probably got the reprint of it because it being in Britain. And it just stuck in my mind for the longest. The character with the long hair and
it might not have been a reprint because at that time I think there were British printings with the British price on it. I know I have some of those from, let's say 76 or 77. So maybe
it's a very early Marvel UK.
Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't Klaus Janson ink Gene Colan?
I'm sure
probably,
quite a bit, yeah.
Because I always thought growing up that people like Frank Giacoya and even Joe Sinnott on Gene Colan didn't work, because we've said before that Gene Colan, I think, was an illustrator rather than a comic book artist.
Yeah.
And he had that illustrative style, that very, very loose style, and needed a loose inker. And there's nobody more rigid inker than Frank Giacoya, although he's good on Kirby and all that. But when Klaus Janson came along and I saw him on Gene Colan, I thought it's perfect because his style is very loose.
Yes, a few looser than
it worked.
Yeah.
I always like Palmer on Colan. I thought the two of them meshed incredibly well. But you haven't read the Dracula stuff, so
I haven't.
The Dracula material.
Never seen it. I've seen pages of it, but I've never read.
What a high point, I think, especially at that time, for the supernatural books. Dracula was.
It's this early 70s, this stuff, 72,
mid 70s, mid to late 70s, I think.
It'd be off the back of the Christopher Lee movies, wouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah, the Hammer films. Yeah,
the Hammer films. So it was very popular at the time, and that
how
look.
Many,
and it was
how many issues?
Look, so.
How many issues, Randy?
Pardon?
How many issues did it run for?
Oh my goodness, over 100. I think it was an incredibly long run.
That's where Blade came from, wasn't it?
Yeah. Blade came out of that I think in the 30 numbers, 34, 36, somewhere in there. I'm sure somebody in the chat could tell us the exact.
The first of the really good superhero films, Blade.
Yeah. And, but again, it was a character created during the blaxploitation period. With Luke Cage with the chains and the and the manacles, and Blade was out there literally a shaft as a vampire hunter.
I mean, it just shows you, just touching on the subjects we were talking about earlier, as a little white boy in the UK, away from America, I loved Luke Cage.
I
loved Blade. I loved Black Panther, although not as much as I liked Luke Cage and Blade. And maybe it was to do with the art. I don't know, because I was obviously, drawn towards certain books. But I loved those characters, and I have to say, it never once occurred to me what color they were. They were just heroes. They were people to look up to. So they were doing good things. They were the heroes in the books.
Those Luke Cages were amazing. The early ones, him living above the theater, and always. He was a hero, but it's like Peter Parker. Again, he was a hero that in real life was always losing and never really making enough.
They had it hard. He was a bit like Peter, but he had that kind of. That was the world outside your window aspect that Stanley was talking about. Not to absolutely mirror the world, but to have that connection to the feelings, the sensations, the aspects of the characters that you understood.
And again, they knew what they were dealing with. They were dealing with superheroes, and superheroes aren't real life. No matter how many people want to say it today, that you're in a fantasy environment, and it needs to stay there.
That's why spandex is king.
That's right.
You just swerved into something really interesting when you mentioned where Luke Cage was living, and you talked about comics being fantastical and not being real life. But one thing that I have found that is really necessary for any character, major, the main character you're developing is, and this is going to sound kind of strange, where do they live? Right? The reader needs to know, where does this person live? Where do they go when they're not doing their thing? And if the reader doesn't, you don't have to concentrate on that, but you have to communicate it. And if the reader doesn't have a sense of that reality of where is this character, if the character just floats in space, fine. That's what the character does on his down or her downtime. But we need to know that. Like Peter Parker was so grounded in, we knew where he lived. We knew where the Fantastic Four lived. And this is something that they kind of got into a little bit of painted themselves into a corner with the Vision, because the Vision wasn't human. So where did the Vision live? I guess the Vision lived in Stark's mansion, right? Lived in, just that's where, but didn't have a life. Just kind of sat there in a room when they weren't on an adventure. So
he wasn't alive, was he?
Right. Yeah. So this is something you have to deal with as a writer.
He was charging like a Tesla. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Did the Vision watch TV?
Plugging in. Yeah.
Getting back to inking and collaborations. Okay, one of the worst collaborations ever was Ross Andru and Bill Everett on the Defenders. Just an issue or two, and Stan Lee just really let Bill Everett have it over the horrible, intentionally horrible job. He didn't like the assignment. He didn't want the assignment. And so he inked every little line. I'm going to try to share my screen here.
Is that in a Marvel feature?
I believe so. Let's see if I can.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can share this here.
Because the big thing I remember about the Defenders was Gerber and Sal Buscema on that title for a long time.
Let's see if we can
Don Perlin draw that as well. The Defenders
towards the end. Yeah,
I've got a page of his
later on.
artwork.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you guys see that?
No, but I'll throw it up here.
No.
Oh, there.
Wow.
Oh.
Look at that leg with the boot going through the leg.
Yeah. And there are page after page of this kind of line work on faces.
Okay. Yeah.
And
look at that beautiful lettering.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's what I'm looking at.
Consistency.
The artwork's not good, but the lettering's fabulous. Sorry, go ahead, Charles.
That doesn't look like either one of them, except for the body style there of the body falling. Looks like Andrew a little bit, but it doesn't look like either one
anyway. I remember when it came out, I bought it and I was like, "Wow, this is bizarre. What were they thinking here?" And I thought, well, Marvel, I'm a Marvel zombie. They must know what they're doing here.
It's very unprofessional to turn that job.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Bill Everett had some issues.
Yeah, we've all got lots of issues with things, but you have to be professional.
I agree. He must have really been on a bender.
Yeah.
That's probably what it was. But at the same time, or slightly before that, Bill was doing his own work on Submariner, and it's just beautiful.
That stuff he did on Thor as well. Those inks, a couple of issues he did on Thor towards the end of Kirby's run.
He did some inks on Barry Smith on Khazar that are just are spectacular. He was a great inker, could be a great inker. Some of my favorite comics of all time are the horror fantasy stories he did in the early 50s for Marvel, the Atlas stuff. Mm-hmm. Venus, some of the most beautifully drawn comics that have never been reprinted, his Venus horror stories. Yeah. And he drew the most beautiful woman you've ever seen in Venus.
So would that be politically incorrect to reprint today, or just Marvel?
No, it really wouldn't. I don't know. They actually did the first volume of Venus when they were kind of more fantasy, fashion type of stories, and then it turned into a horror comic, and they've never reprinted that stuff, except every once in a while in the back of some of the horror reprints they did in the 70s. Like Tomb of whatever, and those are Crypt of this. Those had some reprints of the Venus stories by Bill Everett, but there's never been a comprehensive reprinting of that incredible stuff.
That's that's like printing history right there.
He wasn't very old when he died, Bill Everett.
No.
Was he about 59 or something?
I think he might have been younger than that. It was the early 70s.
Yeah,
Jim Shooter wrote a great story in his blog about Bill Everett, and
he invented the Submariner.
Yeah, and Lee had given him the artwork to do for Daredevil #1.
Yeah,
and it got close to the time of the deadline, and they didn't know they hadn't heard from Bill.
He was 50. He was 55.
Wow. They sent somebody over to his house, and if I remember the story correctly, they ended up finding him drunk in the bathtub, and there wasn't a whole lot done. And that's when Stan called his old standby, Jack, and said, "We're about to blow a deadline." And with the printer, because back then, if you blew a deadline with the printer, you paid a heavy fine.
Yeah.
And because they had to keep them presses rolling. Yeah. So like in a week and a half, Jack ended up drawing Avengers #1. And so if it wasn't
during breakfast,
probably.
Bill Everett's Submariner stories of the 50s,
the
second run of that are just
I've seen
amazing.
a lot of
They're
those.
beautiful. They are
absolutely
they are beautiful. And the reason that title, I believe, kept going so long, even when they canceled Captain America and the Human Torch, was because there was talk of a TV show.
Really?
Was he writing them as well?
I don't know if he was writing the 50s stuff. He might have been.
Was he writing the 40s stuff? I know he created.
No, I don't think so. I maybe the early stuff. That's a really good question.
So was the creation a co-creation then?
Not originally. No, originally it was all him. Originally it was all him. Yeah.
Right.
And back then, you'd land it like Jack Cole would land. Pitch a character and bring me 8 pages, bring me, 2 more stories, or just keep bringing me stories. That's usually what happened up at the offices.
Okay, he wrote the stuff in the 50s.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
What are you using for a reference on that?
The Grand Database, comics.org.
Okay. Yeah, that's a rabbit hole I need to travel down.
Oh, it's a great site. Yeah.
Cool.
Let's look at the 40s to see if he was writing that. Let's take a look. We'll just pick issue number 3 at random. Let's see, Submariner.
And while you do that, I just want to say, hey, everybody out there, we are live. That chat is active today. So make sure you throw at least a hello in the chat. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that love button. We deeply appreciate any interaction that we can find. Make sure you go over to the Indie Comics Network and subscribe and hit that bell for notification. And even if you are subscribed over there, that YouTube is starting to become notorious for unsubscribing people against their will. So go over there and make sure you're still subscribed and tell a friend.
Yeah, it looks like Bill Everett didn't do too much writing in the 40s anyway. On the Submariner, the Submariner became so popular it had a lot of people working on it.
Got his own book. They were plugging away on that, especially during the war. That's pretty classic, though. I think it got to a point where Submariner mentioned that before the war really broke out, that he wasn't going to be killing anymore. And Human Torch definitely decided he wasn't going to light anybody up anymore. I guess he did it the first couple of stories. And then the war happens, and it's like all bets are off if you're German or Japanese. You're done. Yeah. Just crazy.
Yeah, there was a Submariner TV show. They were thinking, okay, this was in the 50s. Superman was a huge hit. And what was the
not as big as Captain Marvel.
The underwater adventure series in the 50s with was it Sea Hunt?
Sea Hunt, Sea Hunt, with Leslie
Nielsen. So they were thinking, okay, maybe we can do something here. Exactly.
Get him and Leslie Nielsen mixed up all the time.
So there was some serious discussion about it, and that's why they kept a title that wasn't selling around for much longer than all the other. I think it lasted for a year and a half. The Submariner comic in the 50s. Yeah. But the TV show obviously never happened.
Yeah, if you're out there and young, there was a period that superheroes didn't sell. In comics, didn't sell. When the war was over, the superhero market just dropped straight to the floor.
Well, yeah, in the early and mid,
that's not because superheroes aren't viable. It's because the talent on them isn't.
Yeah, in the early and mid 50s, DC kept Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman going, and there was virtually nothing else.
Yeah, well, they had to keep Wonder Woman going.
Yeah, for contractual reasons.
Yeah,
I think as far as
Bolton's amazing when you get into that history.
As far as trends go, you have trends, don't you? Like westerns. Westerns were big. And now westerns aren't big, although there's been some really good ones in recent years. And I think superheroes will go through the same process. I mean, they're really big at the moment, but I think they've got maybe another 5 years or so, and then people are not going to want to watch superheroes anymore. They're going to watch something else.
Is Judge Dredd a superhero?
No, that's sci-fi, isn't it?
Science fiction, yeah.
Is it?
Dystopian science fiction. Superheroes have superpowers
Right.
within an environment that I would suggest is most of the time contemporary.
Dredd's got a gun and a bike.
Yeah,
exactly,
and an attitude.
And
Yeah.
attitude.
Yeah, he's like I watched that documentary. It does actually roll with the whole working in teams, as it were. I watched that documentary that you were talking about.
Future Shock. Yeah,
the Future
available
Shock
over on
documentary.
Amazon Prime.
Yeah, don't go there because you have to sign up. All right, for some, you can. It's on YouTube.
Is it
for free?
Okay.
So I watched it on YouTube.
There you go.
And it was excellent. I mean, you're right about Pat Mills.
Yeah.
He says what he wants.
He does,
I know what I like, and I like what I know. It's like he was spot on, and he took no prisoners.
What a collaborator, though!
But what a collaborator!
Look at the amount of work that he did during that period,
and the whole
phenomenal.
The whole book, all of it, all the people that collaborated on that. And
I never realized reading it just how subversive it was, and how it was, writing that punk wave was just
I don't think I really, at the age of a very tender age, shall we say, because I'm not giving away my age online. I'm not precious. I don't care. I'm not giving it away. but I was very young when I was reading this stuff, and although being naive and young, I probably didn't get all of it, if you see what I mean, all of the subversion. I was still aware of the subversion. I was still very, very aware of it, because at the time, I mean, I was just a little bit too young for punk. Okay, rode on the end of that wave. So I did get it. I did get it. And Judge Dredd was quite obviously a fascist.
What an unbelievable political statement, though.
Yeah, he was a fascist. He was a hideous fascist. It's like you don't want a scenario where your police are judge and executioner. You don't want that. However, he was the good guy. You always loved Judge Dredd. You were always on his side.
I always thought that Judge Dredd would have been thrown out of the Gestapo for cruelty.
Exactly. Yeah, like he took no prisoners. Literally, he took no prisoners. And yet he said something. I mean, if you think about it, that was punk. That strip was punk, and yet he was the exact opposite of punk.
Yeah,
he was an extreme establishment.
Yeah,
and yet it was punk rock. The
when
way
when you read that stuff, you realise what state Pat Mills's mind must have been in.
And John Wagner as well. It's like
John Wagner,
the whole thing. But the point being is, and you could see it written large on all of those creators' faces when you watch the documentary, is that they were just about the subversion.
Yeah,
they were just about pushing the medium. They were just about pushing the boundaries, which is what art should be in all its forms.
One of the things I loved about the Dredd series was in those times was the subtle, not so subtle things on the walls, like George Michael block for the housing and Tariq Ali Ali, stuff like that.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant. I mean, these, and it's like only in some ways only Britain could have done it.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that was a very British. It wasn't because it wasn't European comics either. It was definitely a British thing.
Yeah, I remember seeing in the early 70s, a friend of mine was an Anglophile, as we all were back then and still are. And there was a poster he had in his room that was some sort of British protest poster. And I don't know if it was the police that were being depicted or the army, and it said judge, jury, and executioner. It was a protest poster.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and then when Judge Dredd came out, I thought, oh, well, that must have been the influence for that concept of judge, jury, and executioner, that these protest posters, which I thought was very interesting. The other question I have, because I'm not 100% familiar with 2000 AD, is you want to get back to collaboration. Was anybody there, any of the art, a separate penciler and inker, or was every penciler inking himself?
Yeah, it was usually full art from one guy. Yeah,
usually. Yeah.
And that made for very distinctive looks.
Yeah.
With the different artists. Because obviously Brian Bolland doesn't look anything like McMahon or any of the other artists.
Well, that showed me for sure how good the character of Judge Dredd was, because there were so many different styles on that series, but none of them ever held it back. There were always brilliant art, but it was all about the character and the writing, and that's why it's so outstanding.
And that's what's great about comics, is that I can sit there and I can be marveled, I can be absolutely blown away by Sinnott's run on Fantastic Four over 5 or 6 different pencilers, and the way that he had this beautiful continuity through the whole thing, and yet at the same time love 7 or 8 different artists on Judge Dredd. All of them look completely different and still have that same continuity.
When you picked up 2000 AD and it was Ron Smith, you thought, wow. And then after that sort of 5-week story, Bolland was on it. You never thought, oh, where's Ron Smith? You thought, oh, wow. and then Cam Kennedy had come on it, and you think, oh, look at this. The
greatest, in my view, the greatest, and I know this is cliche, and a lot of people say this, but it hit me at the time. The Judge Death story just blew me away artistically. Brian Bolland just blew me away. I'd never seen anything like it before in all the comics that I'd read.
Over here, we read that in the Eagle. In the Eagle Comics reprints in color.
Right. The Titan collections in black and white. That's how I found it. Yeah.
Those are great. I love that. I love the reproduction.
Yeah.
The size is the magazine size, but the Eagle Comics were standard comic book size, and they were in color. That was my introduction, and I bought them all.
Yeah, no, just beautiful stuff, and so much of the artwork was visceral. I mean, it actually got a lot more visceral in the 90s because they started putting color in, and people painted lots of blood spatter and stuff. But it was just so, there was just something so solid about it. I loved the ABC Warriors. Prior to that, they were Robusters in Star-Lord. And Strontium Dog came from Star-Lord as well.
He did. Yep.
And he became a real stalwart of 2000 AD.
And yet, exactly opposite of Judge Dredd. You couldn't see Strontium Dog being drawn by anybody but Carlos.
Just
but also such a feel to it and a grit.
But also
beautiful work. Yeah.
But also diametrically different from Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
Okay, that it was a different character. It was about minorities. It was our X-Men for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, that's very true.
It was about minorities. It was about how people had been downtrodden by the system. Okay, and that he was working his way through it as a mutant.
Yeah.
And the friend and the people that he befriended along the way, as well as the villains that he tracked down. And he was politically diametrically opposed to Judge Dredd. And yet technically
I keep hearing my poor little heartsies. Anyway,
yes. But technically, they were both doing the same job.
Yeah.
Okay, and that was what it just, the more you explore the different stories and different aspects of 2000 AD and just how subversive it was. And it wasn't just subversive from a shock perspective. It made you think. As a kid, even a naive child, it made me think.
Those two characters one was so far right, one was so far left that they were actually standing next to each other, weren't they?
Exactly. They met the circle. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
And it was so different from Marvel. It was so different from what Marvel was doing. Because I had been reading Marvel, and it's just like, what is this? There's no angst. And it's funny and grim at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was laugh out loud funny, and yet it couldn't have been grimmer.
That's right.
No, it was very grim
and it's an IP farm that nobody has really worked to any level
Rebellion
outside of one movie for Dredd that was good.
Rebellion have got hold of it, but they need to. there's so much opportunity now. I don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, up in the last 10, 15 years, sci-fi, superhero, whatever you want to call it, those kind of fantasy films have done extraordinarily well. It seems now is the perfect time.
Well, David Bowie's son Duncan is supposedly producing Rogue Trooper.
Rogue Trooper.
I don't know what's happened to it, but over these past couple of years, I know he's been working on it. I don't know where it is.
Well, surely Strontium Dog is perfect.
Rutger Hauer was associated with Rogue Trooper for a long time.
Yeah.
It is funny.
He was supposed to do one. Yeah.
It is frustrating to see these things not done at all,
No,
or not done right. I remember we mentioned Val Semix, who drew the Conans that I wrote. We went to see the Conan movie when it came out, and I remember
Which one?
The first one.
And with Arnold.
Yeah, and we thought it just had nothing to do with the stories.
No.
And I remember him coming out and practically, punching the windshield out of his car. That's how angry he was. And I just keep thinking every time they do it, just film the stories.
Yeah.
Film the stories.
Yep.
Film Red Nails. Film Tower the Elephant. You've got the story. It's written. Just film it.
That's what I always say about the Fantastic Four.
And it's beautiful literature too. That's the thing.
Yes.
The problem is that whenever you
pulp escapism, but it's the stories are amazing.
Whenever Hollywood or TV or whatever want to make a classic, there's always creators involved who want to stamp themselves on it.
Yeah.
Rather than if you want to stamp yourself on it, make something new. And be remembered for that new thing. If you're going to do something from the past, if you're going to do a classic, a la Lord of the Rings, the 3 movies, do your best to get that story out onto the screen without...
And casting is a big problem with Conan. I mean, you probably find a better Conan than they've found in the movies. If you went into a dive bar in West Virginia, you would probably find a more accurate Conan. I mean, there are guys out there like that. I don't know if any of them can act. You could probably find one that could come out.
The what?
I actually thought that the comic book version, which was drawn by John Buscema of the Arnie film, was better than the film.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I thought? You know what I thought was hysterical? This was really funny. Is the Mad Magazine parody of the Conan movie?
I've not seen that.
You know who they got to draw it? You know who drew it? This is how little respect they had for that movie. Don Martin.
Okay. Oh no. I probably have that in hardback.
Yeah, I thought there was no better comment on how ridiculous they thought that movie was that they got Don Martin to do the parody.
You can
hear Arnie's voice in your head while you reading.
You were saying about filming the stories. I've said this before. The Fantastic Four first 100 issues, they should just film that. They should set it in the 60s, and they should make it like a period piece, so to speak.
Pie hats and
skinny ties and trousers and all that. They should film that because
just film the source material.
Yeah.
In all fairness, though, to the Arnie film, because I was only a kid when I watched that. In all fairness to the Arnie film, it's a hell of a lot better than the more recent film that Aquaman did. Yeah,
Momoa did.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. I am very, very, very shallow. Okay, so so I kind of like all kind of crap movies, and I'll sit there and let it wash over me. But even I could see that, and even I could see that although Arnold Schwarzenegger's film is far the superior of the more recent one, it ain't Conan. It isn't the real.
No, I thought there was more of the spirit of Robert E. Howard in The Road Warrior than there's been in any Conan movie.
Oh, I wish I could blow this up. This is Conehead the Barbiturate.
Yeah.
I love those noses.
Does it say Flobadap anywhere?
Not that I've seen, no.
The master of the sound effect. Look at that.
I can't enlarge it, but just unbelievable stuff. Well, Don Martin. Sheer genius. Again, Mad Magazine, talk about collaborations. MC got all this talent and said, just go.
I've got very few of those.
those artists were like 2000 AD. They produced full art, didn't they? Nobody was inking another's pencils and stuff. And again, when you see the Mort Drucker stuff, and then you see the Angelo Torres stuff, and all that kind of, and especially Jack Davis, it's totally different. But it's not. But it's all fantastic stuff, you know.
And the same thing with the EC books they did before that. The comics, nothing like Graham Ingalls.
I got something ready here. We want to talk about collaboration, and you mentioned Mad Magazine. Okay.
Yeah.
I worked with Walter Brogan, who did the movie parodies and TV parodies for Cracked.
Okay.
For 25 years on a Marcosia project called Danny and Harry Private Detectives, which was a funny animal noir.
Okay.
And what he sent me, well, I wanted him to do Rammer, but he said, no, I got these characters. I'm going to see if I can, let me see if I can share this screen. And we'll take a look at what he showed me and said, give me a story. So let's see if we can see this. All right. So he sent me, this is what he sent me. No story, just these pictures. Okay. And this.
Okay.
And this.
Yeah.
They're bonkers.
And this.
Butcher Kane, I love that.
And this. And this.
Cool characters there, yeah.
Yeah, and he said, okay, give me a story.
And that contract. No.
Yeah. And how's that? Hey, you recognize that?
No.
That's where they filmed some scenes from The Road Warrior.
Oh, okay.
It's my screen.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Walter sent me that stuff, and he said, I want to do a story called The Case of the Missing Trunk. And that elephant character was the main character, and his trunk is missing. And I said, well, that's kind of a really, really little kind of kid story, and I don't even know what I would do with that. I said, how about we do it for real, where it's a real gritty noir story, except we're looking at these silly characters, but they're not going to talk silly. They're going to talk real. Yeah. Except they're going to look like that, and the trunk is going to be an actual trunk, like a steamer trunk. And that's going to be the Maltese Falcon of this story. So that's what we did, and I kind of had to drag him kicking and screaming with his own characters. You know, it's a collaboration, but these were his characters. And we were 50-50 on the rights, but I felt an obligation to stay true to part of his vision, which was the characters. And it worked really well. We went separate ways because with the second story that we were working on, he just wanted to do more of the writing, and it wasn't so much that I didn't like where it was going in the writing. It was that it became too much work. It was just like there was going to be so much back and forth in creating the story. The first story was 98% me. The second story was going to be about 50-50 in terms of plot, and I just didn't have the time. Right. So there's an example of the practicality or the lack of practicality of certain collaborations. We got along great. I respected his talent. He respected my talent, but it just wasn't going to work for that second story. But the first one was great. We did 6 digital issues, and then we collected it in paperback for Marcosia.
Okay.
And it's really wonderful. It's funny, but yet we never winked at the audience. We never said, "Yeah, we know you're looking at silly characters here." No, we played it straight. You could have filmed it straight with Neil Adams' art. You could have done the same story. So that was a collaboration that was very. I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was very successful, but it, like I said, just became impractical for me to spend what would have been 5 times as much time to write the second story because of all the back and forth.
Right.
I figure we're almost done here, so we better start talking about collaborations.
We have been in a lot of ways, so yeah.
Do you know what? I think probably this is one of the most consistently on point episodes I've been in so far.
Oh, wow, amazing!
Well, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, because we went all over the place at the start of this episode.
Don't forget, it's not Sunday.
No, I know. No, but I know we went over the place, but everything has come back to the same. We've been talking about collaboration. We're talking about how to get, books done in teams of one sort or another, and how other teams have done it, and what their creative output has been through that team process.
Yeah, and my earlier pearl of wisdom about how it's like a marriage. Every collaboration, it's like a marriage. And when I come to collaboration number 1 with whoever, it's going to be a completely different experience than number 2 with somebody else, even though I'm the same person. But the mixture of the 2 or more people is always going to create something that is distinctive and unique, and there's a lot of give and take, and sometimes you want to take more than you want to give, and if that's okay with everybody else, then it's going to work. But if it's not, then there's a lot of acrimony and recriminations, and people end up going their separate ways.
Speaking of collaboration, I've always wondered how musicians do it. So if you get sort of David Bowie going into a studio with an idea for a song, and Mick Ronson puts the guitar on it and arranges it and then produces it and all this, whose song is it? And at the end of the day, it says written by David Bowie, and he gets all the money. Yeah. Well, if you look at, I don't know her name. The bass intro on Wichita Lineman is by this lady. I don't remember her name, and it's one of the most significant parts of the song. Did she get paid the session for that?
But isn't that like turning up and doing a page and getting paid for the page?
Yep,
it's the same thing, isn't it? You have a particular talent. Okay, and that talent expresses itself, and it doesn't always express itself in a particular fixed format. Ergo, her talent turns into this riff or whatever it might be. Yeah. Okay, but she's paid for the time that she puts into it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Because she's of that talent.
It's like with when Paul McCartney did Yesterday, none of the other Beatles were there. They left after the session, and Paul said to George Martin, "Can you just stay? I've just got this idea." And George Martin, they put it down, and all it is Paul on his acoustic guitar, and George Martin wrote the score for the violins or whatever it's called, and the
orchestration.
The orchestration. That's the most recorded and best-selling song of all time.
It's a Beatles song. Yeah.
Well, it's still a collaboration.
That's just what I'm saying.
I have a theory, which is that with musicians, that frequently the solo albums that somebody does while they're part of a certain band are better than the solo albums they do after that band breaks up.
Yeah.
And the reason is that they're still feeding, even though it's solo, they're still feeding off the energy of the band they're in. Yep. I think the best stuff that John Lennon did as a solo artist were the singles he did while the Beatles were still a band. Because I think he was still feeding off of the creative energy of the group that he was in, even though he was doing solo stuff.
I think it spilled over, didn't it? Because McCartney's best solo album's got to be Band on the Run, which is 3 years after the Beatles broke up. But I think there's still going to be some gems coming out from that.
Some of it was written. Sometimes some of this stuff was written while the band, but never like some of John Lennon's stuff from, I think, the second solo album he had after the Beatles broke up was written. That stuff from that album, some of it was written while the Beatles were still a band.
Most of George Harrison's solo career was written during the Abbey Road period.
But also you get
there was a time he quit the band for like weeks and went off into his mansion and just wrote.
But also you get
all of his frustration out.
Also, you get certain significant figures that aren't necessarily at the front end, that you don't know who they are, that are like a vein through many people's work. So, for instance, in that case with the Beatles and a huge number of other stars in the UK is Jeff Lynne, who's the head of ELO.
Yeah.
And he's effectively the backbone of British music, that guy. And I didn't realize this.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
You know, but he had his fingers in that many different places, producing, writing, just being a creative force. I didn't realize just what a massive figure he was within the industry until a few years ago. And it's the same in the comic book industry. There will be people that you don't necessarily know who they are. They may be famous, they may be not. Infamous even, and they'll have that. They'll be part of that vein of creativity.
I think Marie Severin falls into that section.
Yeah,
that's just going to say that. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Good example. Colorist for EC. That's how she got her start, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great cartoonist.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the Not Brand X are her.
Yeah.
I just picked up one of those. It was a best of. I think it was number 10, and she did a new cover for it, which just was the faces, the way she drew it of all the Marvel characters and every character that was in there. Yeah. And my favorite, I'm looking at it and I'm going, Silver Surfer. What? Something's weird going. Oh yeah, he's wearing a bathing cap. Yeah, he's wearing a silver bathing cap.
Silver burper.
I love that.
Silver burper.
Yeah.
What great stuff.
Getting back to the people behind the scenes with music, every song and the only songs that I like and love by T-Rex are produced by Tony Visconti.
Yeah. Get it on.
I like everything by them that he produced, and I don't like anything they did without him. Yeah. So obviously, and their hits were all with him.
Yeah.
So obviously, there's a collaboration with a producer.
Let me tell you a story about that T-Rex Mark Bolan thing. When I was 16, I went to the record shop to buy the T-Rex album. It's got Jeepster on it and Get It On and those. When I got to the shop, I decided to buy the McCartney album with the cherries on, his first solo album. And I came home with Abbey Road. And I made the right decision. So I went to buy T-Rex, was going to buy McCartney, and came home with Abbey Road.
I assume you bought the others at some point later?
No.
No.
You don't. Oh, sorry. I got the Cherries album. I never got T-Rex.
You don't own Electric Warrior.
No.
Okay.
That's the one I was going for.
I won't hold that against you.
I think I made the right choice. I listen to Abbey Road at least twice a month, even now. So it's very good.
I'm the same way with Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah,
I just love that album. I saw a documentary about how it was all put together. It's just amazing.
Have you heard the mono version?
Yes, I've got the mono version.
Yeah, it's a very different experience.
Yeah.
I'll have to look for
Do you know what's incredible about the cover artwork is that David Blake or somebody did that artwork for that cover on Sgt. Pepper. He got paid £200, which in 1967 was quite a considerable amount of money. But but considering that Sgt. Pepper, I think it had 7 million advanced copies. 7 million before it came out. Yeah. And he got £200.
I almost worked with him.
Did you?
Almost worked with him. Yeah. Tim was got him to. It was back when Alfonso, or whatever his name was in charge of Marvel. Alonso, that's it, Alonso. Yeah. And Tim actually got to speak to him, and it was about the Marvel not centenary. It was like a big birthday that was coming up, a big anniversary, and he had a story where the Fantastic Four and all the other characters that were around in that time, were getting off a plane, and were put into some kind of mystery situation. And he'd written this story, and he was speaking to him about it, and he was talking about me doing the pencils, and Blake doing the covers. So he'd actually got hold of him at the time, and Alonso was like, "Yeah, this sounds great," and it never went anywhere, obviously. But it would have been pork pie hats and drain pipe trousers and everything. It would have been from the 60s. It would have been all works.
That'd have been great.
And, that would have been. I'd have loved to have done that. Yeah.
The British.
But
oh, go ahead.
That was Alonso. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, the British readers actually saw. Getting back to Jim Starlin, the British readers saw Jim Starlin way before we did here, because
Really?
and now I've seen the he did covers and things and posters and pinups for some of the British publications that were doing that were reprinting Marvel, and I've only recently seen this stuff. We never saw it at the time. And it was never reprinted or published here, so you probably
what they would do over in Britain is they would cut a story in half, and then the second half of the story would start with a big splash page that was original art.
Yeah, and he did covers as well, and so you in England, you probably saw Jim Starlin for maybe 2 years before we ever saw anything by him here, which is kind of interesting.
It's funny with Jim Starlin because some of his work, literally just the visuals, I'm not incredibly keen on, and some of it I think looks great, but as an overall creator, I can't. Do you know what I mean? I just think he's fantastic. He's just an imagination.
Yeah, I never liked his artwork, I have to say.
Really,
I find him in a Kirby mold, as in. He had an expansive imagination that would keep on going. He could just add and just make great stories.
It's definitely cosmic. That's for
sure.
Definitely
cosmic, and he's a big influence on my work.
Definitely. His first appearance as Shang Chi.
Yeah,
was Starlin, and it's beautiful. It's just a gorgeous.
I was really disappointed with the death of Captain Marvel.
Yeah, he had broken his hand right before that.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and I don't think his art was ever the same.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Have you ever seen the black and white stuff he did? The Darklon stuff for Eerie?
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing stuff. Amazing.
Pacific Collective.
Yeah, they did in color. Yeah. And also he did a Conan story that I really like.
Okay. I can see him doing Conan. Yeah. I don't remember the story, but I bet he did. Yeah, but it was amazing.
It's been reprinted a couple of times and in color, of course.
Yeah. But I find it the same as with Barry Windsor Smith. I'm not a great lover of Barry's work.
I love his stuff now, but I didn't like his early Conan.
I again absolutely appreciate him as an artist and total respect for his abilities. It's just taste. It just comes down to taste.
Absolutely.
The one thing I
was so keen on Buscema's Conan, and he's so different.
He is.
It was.
But the Conan that Smith did was different from the Conan that Buscema did.
Very different.
Smith handled him when he at his youth, when he was a thief. The cool thing I like about those first 25 issues of Conan is you see such an evolution in Smith's work. In his style, he goes from from a novice to an experienced illustrator.
Yeah.
Within those 25 pages, it's amazing.
A very early reprint of two of the early 2 and 3, I think. And you can see his art is just so simple compared to where it went.
And it just keeps getting, every issue is just like another step up where he's
Barry Smith's another one of those I consider to be an illustrator rather than a comic book artist.
Yeah,
and you've seen his paintings. His paintings are incredible.
However, saying that, I did pick up a Machine Man book.
Yeah, I've got that. Yeah,
simply because of the art.
Those are great. Those are beautiful.
And I picked that up simply because of the art. Yeah. And yet, I'm not a fan of his Conan.
But those are a collaboration. Those are a collaboration with Herb Trimpe.
Herb Trimpe,
right?
Okay.
I love Herb.
And you have to understand when the Conan. I talked about the few things in comics that blew my mind. The original Conans did, because you have to understand that up until Conan came out, comics, even Marvel comics, were kind of goody two shoes.
Yeah.
And this guy, he was a bad guy. I mean, he was a thief. He was a murderer. He treated women like
he was a man of his time.
I mean, and this blew my mind. I was like, wow, how could Marvel be publishing this story about this bad guy?
That's an all over again, isn't it? It's the subversion. That's what.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
It's an underappreciated point in Marvel's history, Roy Thomas's contribution to Marvel, bringing them Conan, telling them it would sell, them looking at him like he's crazy, but doing it anyway, and it sold.
And he convinced Stan had to convince Martin Goodman to pay money for a character, for the rights to a character.
Yeah,
this was unheard of.
And then later, Roy brought them Star Wars too.
Yeah, and that saved their asses.
It did. It saved them from bankruptcy.
And they didn't want to do it.
No.
They went. By the way, Star Wars went to DC first. They talked to DC. They talked to Jeanette Kahn.
Yeah.
And they decided, you know what? This is not the place for us. DC's not hip. Marvel is.
They sent them to Marvel.
DC talked to Jeanette. Star Wars talked to Jeanette Kahn, and they just decided. I think we need to go over to Marvel.
We'll pass, but a few years later, we'll get Jose Garcia Lopez to do Atari for us so that we can have Star Wars tied into a video game.
So
there you go.
What book is that you've got, Randy? The Star Wars one, the reprint of the original
the Epic Collection.
Collection, because all I get is like new stuff on
no,
Amazon.
This is I don't know if Amazon would even have copies of this thing anymore because I found it at Ollie's for like $5.
We don't have an Ollie's.
Yeah.
Ollie's is not international.
Everybody needs an Ollie's. I'm telling you.
Well, I live in New York and we don't have an Ollie's either.
Odd Lots.
Odd Lots. No, I think we might have that. We might have that. But we don't have Books A Million, and we don't have half price books, which I'd like both of those. Oh, there we go.
Right there, it's the Epic Collection. It was $5.99.
Epic Collection.
Yep.
Now the comic of Return of the Jedi came out before the movie and had the big giveaway about Luke being Leia's sister, brother and sister.
So Empire came out before the movie did too, because I knew how it ended when I went to see it at the theater. I was sitting back and when the Millennium Falcon flies off, I went, and that's how it ends. And everybody was screaming in the theater. It was great.
It's now called Star Wars Legends, the Epic Collection.
Is it Al Williamson, Randy, drew most of that?
Oh, and this Star Wars? No, it's a combination of all sorts of folks. It's the first like 25 issues.
It's not newspaper strips, is it?
No.
Did Al Williamson?
The Williamson newspaper strips are amazing too.
Right. Yeah.
There's a book of that.
Russ Manning first started out doing that for a couple years, and then I think Rudy Nebras come in and did it for a story or two, and then they gave it to Al Williamson. Archie Goodwin wrote those. Yeah, wrote those strips. Just classic stuff. Yeah. This has got Chaikin, Infantino, Simonson, Trempe, Cooperberg, Palmer, Dzugna, and Cockram as artists.
Sounds like one to miss, then, doesn't it?
It's just a collection of the first set.
I do remember it as a kid, though. I remember buying a few of those.
Great stuff.
There's a lot of good memories in them. They're £30 on Amazon. So.
Okay.
I was in London in January of 1997, and I went to comic book shops and saw these. I didn't know that there were British editions of Marvel Comics. That the only difference was the UK price on it, and this was fascinating to me. And I bought a bunch of them. I remember buying some early Howard the Ducks and a bunch of other Marvel comics. And I later found out that some of them look better than the Americans because they ran those first here and to ship them over. So the first Marvel comics to come off the presses were the British editions, so they'd have time. So they'd have time to get across the pond.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah. How about that?
There's an international collaboration. There you go.
Yeah.
There you are.
See, I told you I'd get it back every time.
There you go.
It was also fascinating to me to go into bookstores and to see British editions of novels. a Philip Roth novel with a British cover. And at the time, there were a lot of photographs on British covers of paperback books, which was really odd to me. So not from a movie, but just there was a photograph as illustrating the book. And I thought, this is really odd. And the British typography looked a little different to me. You know, even though it was in English, you know, there was a certain style to the book covers that was a very different sensibility than the American book cover. It was like I was in this alternative universe because it was in English. If I had been in France or something, I would have expected everything to look different because it's in French. But here it was in my native tongue, except the spellings were a little different here and there. So it was and I brought home.
Correct.
This was really weird. I brought home an entire suitcase full of British books, and customs looked at it like really bizarre. Like, why is this guy's suitcase full of books?
What's he trying to pull here? Is this all pornography or what? Yeah.
Are these books made of crack?
Or do you have a ball hammer hidden in one?
Yeah, why is this book ticking?
Anyway, collaborations, folks. If you have any comments, leave a comment. Thanks for contributing in the chat. Agent Zero is here, who wants us to hold the applause. Hey, yo, I'm here. Hold the applause. Brianna's in the house. Thank you very much for tuning in. John Celestri, of course, says, hey, guys, too early. Not for some of us. Hojo says, just look at George Harrison's first album, a triple album. He had so much material from his days with the Beatles. Yeah,
but one of the discs was live.
Yeah, and the other one was a jam session, wasn't it? So I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something about no more Pakistanis, which you couldn't get away with today.
He did say he had an entire notebook full of songs. He was complaining about that in the Peter Jackson documentary, where they went through and filmed everybody, I think, doing Let It Be.
Yeah.
Doing their last album, and then deciding to do the concert on the roof. Yeah. They were going to do it as a TV special, and it just didn't gel together. Then they decided to just go up on the roof and perform. I want to thank everybody for coming in today. I want to thank everybody for watching us. Deeply appreciate you all. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure, if you're not subscribed to the Indie Comics Network, that you go over there and do that. And I also want to point out that if you're fulfilling a Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign, you need to ship your comics. You need to look at shipping them with a Gemini mailer, GeminiComicSupply.com. If you go over there, they have Gemini mailers for all different sizes, for all different formats. On your way out the door, while you buy your Gemini mailers, you use that coupon code RAGIN10, RAGIN 1 and 0, and they will cut 10% off of your order. So right now, 10% can be a lot. So,
and we're collaborating right now.
Yeah, collaborating as we speak
on this stream.
Yep. We'll be back next week, folks, with another episode of Comics by Night on Friday morning. Make sure you tune in, because it's a very special episode where we interview Rob Marzullo, who has a video. Who's a video teacher, teaches how to draw comics and a basic drawing online.
He's a good guy.
And does comics. Yeah, he's a great guy.
I've met him at cons.
Have you?
Yeah.
Sweet. Cool.
Yeah. And speaking of cons, I will be next Friday. I'll be at the New York con.
Wow.
Next Saturday, I'll be at the Bowling Green, Kentucky convention. So with Luke Stone, set up as Arrow Comics.
Yeah. Anybody who wants to track me down at the con, if you're going to be there, please reach out to me on Facebook.
And tell folks how they can find you, Charles.
Well, they can find me on Facebook, and occasionally I'm on that cesspool Twitter. Very rarely. Instagram every once in a while. Rammer is my character, the master thief in a future police state. Can be found on Amazon. No longer on sale. Now it's the regular price. It was briefly on sale on Amazon. But that's where you can find me, primarily on Facebook, and wherever books are sold online, you can find Rammer.
Russ, tell folks how they can find you.
You can find me at russleach.com. So I'm on multiple social medias and on YouTube and what have you. And you can look at all my artwork there. So connect with me, whatever. And russleach.com. That's it.
Any word on the Batman magazine getting out different places?
I, as far as I'm aware, the Batman magazine will go to Italy, France, Germany, and bizarrely Brazil.
That's not. Their comics are big down there.
Yeah, no. I meant that. I think the thing is when Panini first made their bid over the Marvel UK distribution deal and content deal. I think it included Brazil at the time.
Yeah,
and I think I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that's what it is. It's historic. So
if they're going to send it to Brazil, they might as well send it to Portugal too. Then
that would be nice, wouldn't it? It would be lovely to be completely pan-European.
There you go.
Also, touch wood. With it being pan-European, with it being in lots of different cost centers, it drives the overall price of cost of production down.
Yeah,
which means there's a better chance of us having longevity in the title.
Yeah.
So I'm touching wood. This one's going to keep me busy for a while.
So. Congratulations on drawing Batman.
Thank you. I mean, I have passed the story on, Charles.
Thank you.
That's okay. And obviously, they'd like to do more. They'd like to do more, but we've got to tentatively see how the market works.
Sure.
That's definitely a bucket list item for me. I mean, the fact that I haven't done any editorial work for Marvel as far as monthly stories are concerned, but I have at least got them on my CV. I worked with Marvel and Panini on books, and now I've done DC as well. And Batman, it's the top of everybody's list.
I really liked your original concept drawings for that.
Yeah.
What, the cartoony ones?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed doing those as well. But they said they wanted to keep it more sort of in keeping with the stuff that's already out there, because I do think DC have got some juvenile Batman stuff going on in the States as well.
Yeah.
So I think they just wanted to keep it all sort of roughly sort of housey, styly kind of thing, as in a little bit older. But I did enjoy doing those cartoony versions. And I'll be honest, the idea of me having my own version of Batman was that really got me going, because I thought, well, I might be able to actually, even though this isn't my style, I may be able to put my print on there without changing the character, just my visual perception of it. But saying that, I've got my own style, so I'm really pleased. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Yeah, great. Glenn, tell folks how they can find you.
Usual places like Facebook and Instagram, and I've got a few YouTube films on there of me drawing and things like that. If you want to get in touch with me, go to Comics Unlimited Magazine at gmail.com. But if you want this, which you should do, you need to get in touch with me, because I've taken it off Indiegogo in demand. So you need to contact me if you want to get a copy of this. Maybe I'll sign it and all that sort of stuff.
Sweet. Yep.
Yeah, that's the one.
In the CD. Oh, CD.
There you go. Look.
Got it. And I was going to say before we go that if you want to read about the ultimate collaboration, especially in comics, the ultimate collaboration, there is a book out by Tomorrow's Publishing called Nuff Said.
Is that the hardcover?
No, this is the trade.
Yeah, they reissued it in hardcover with some additional material. It's a great book. It's one of my favorite books to drag into the bathroom.
If you ever want to read all of the he saids,
it's fantastic.
About who did what and where and when and created when and which, and it's a fascinating story because nobody kept track back then. They had no idea that what was going to happen with comics, though. That Jack Kirby knew.
Can I just say that all my stuff is on Amazon. You can also get this magazine I produced a couple of years ago. This is just different people talking about their favorite comics and things and all that kind of thing. So that's on all my stuff is on Amazon.
I didn't mean to cut you off there.
It's all right.
Appreciate everybody being here. Everybody
Yeah,
coming on.
I'm taking notes, Glenn. I didn't know about that book.
Yeah.
As we go, we want to remember the immortal words of Jack Kirby, who said, "The audience is always there, and the comic book has yet to reach its full potential."
Yeah.
Jack
True
Kirby.
then and true now.
Look at that artwork on that table. Wow.
Yeah, just phenomenal stuff.
Oh,
One of the greatest collaborators of all
put that
time,
back
right
up.
there.
Put that back up. Sorry.
Just
Put it back up so I can soak it in a bit more.
Yeah.
Give me some. Give me some.
Joe Simon also has a book out, autobiography that is available in hardcover.
Right.
During
There's
the
a confidence in that
early days. Yeah.
Yeah, another collaborator with Jack.
Another collaborator with Jack.
Yeah. Let me show you this just quickly, Randy, please. On the back of this, right? We've got this. We've got on the back of this, which is on Amazon now. On the back, we've got a picture of Jack Kirby that I took in his studio, and this artwork there, that is my artwork on his mantelpiece in his studio. That's mine there. And I'm thinking, and that was the second visit, and I'm thinking that Roz Kirby put that up. I hope it was there for 3 years, between seeing him. I suspect it wasn't, and I just think that she probably remembered who I was and put it back there. But
that's typical Roz.
Yeah, there it is. So
great
go and
stuff.
check it out.
All right.
We are going to get Greta on the way out, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's there again, look.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, I'm done.
It's all right. I've been your host, Randy Zimmerman. You can find me on Facebook if you're looking. You can always email me at thezimcast@gmail.com. Zimcast is on Wednesday, at least for next week at 8 p.m. We might be shoving that time around a little bit. Then, of course, Friday mornings at 5 a.m. Eastern time, we'll do Comics by Night again. Like I said, don't miss next week's show. It's a great show. It'll be a pre-recorded show, but Rob is there, Glenn is there, and it's just a great episode. So don't miss out. The chat won't be live. We won't be reading from the chat, obviously, but the chat will be open. So behave, please behave. And then on Sunday morning we do Sunday Funnies. And this Sunday's show is really also an excellent show. You need to watch that 9 a.m. Eastern time, Sunday Funnies. Then we'll be back. I'll do the Zimcast again at 8 p.m. on Wednesdays. You can, if you're looking for any of my work, you can find War of the Worlds Infestation over on Amazon, a collection of 5 issues that I wrote that were drawn by the great artist Horace from Germany. It's an updating of the novel War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, where they invade again and they're licking their little bacterial problem, and so it turns into a real war. And then other than that, I'm working on other stuff. Look forward to seeing more from Arrow Comics this year and next. If you get a chance, go over to the Rift Riders campaign over on Indiegogo. They have an Arrow Comics tier where you can get 8 great Arrow comics that very few people have seen. HeroBot 01, Only Death Can Save Us 1, Revolt 1, Paragon 1, Calico 1, Hybrids 1, all a great set of 8 number ones, including Rift Riders, which is also a phenomenal book. And Marv's book Sin Killer is also available in that group for only $50 plus shipping. And that'll ship out all over worldwide. So you can go over there and get hard copies of a great group of number one Arrow comics. They're on the Rift Riders campaigns on Indiegogo. We'll watch a little trailer for that on our way out the door.
Hey, Randy, did you say licking a bacterial problem?
I was about
licking.
They
lick their bacteria.
I wouldn't want to be licking a bacterial problem.
That's what got him in the book in the first
don't
novel.
Lick things, kids. Don't lick stuff. You don't know.
They figured out what to lick and when. That's what it is. Yeah. Actually, they turned the red weed into a terraforming device. So when they land, they let loose the red weed again, and especially through the plains, and it starts eating all sorts of organic matter. So not only do they have the Martians to worry about, they've got flesh-eating red weed to deal with as well. Got really close to being a miniseries. I swear it did. Gary Reed called me up, who was at working, he was Caliber, and calls me up out of the blue and goes, I don't want you to get excited, but the contracts are on their last round now, and it just might make it. It's looking like a 5-hour miniseries. Wow. And then NBC changed executives, and the whole idea went out the door. And then it got close again until Stupid Cruise and that messy movie that he ended up freaking
not a good movie.
Because as soon as Cruise and Spielberg announced they were doing it, nobody else wanted to touch War of the Worlds.
That's his Hollywood nickname, Stupid Cruise.
Stupid Cruise. Yeah. Anyway, grumble. We'll see everybody next time. Thanks again for watching. Deeply appreciate you being here. Make sure you subscribe to that Indie Comics Network, and take care, everybody.
That's we're done.
Harry, what is it?
The stuff that dreams are made of.
Huh?
What was that? This is not a charade. We need total concentration. Now, once again, this time, with theory.
How dare you?
Can't nobody tell me nothing. You can't tell me nothing.
When your timeline reaches its Armageddon, what's a kid to do?
I'm not a...
Snag the keys to your mom's experimental ship, of course.
That's not quite how it happened.
Drift aimlessly in the rift between dimensions, trying to figure out how to operate it.
Now hold on a sec.
Pick up a few hitchhikers.
Hi! Hello.
And maybe solve a disturbing mystery that could lead to the destruction of reality itself.
You know, if this time... There's always time.
I'm not so sure about that.
Get in on the adventure with the Rift Riders on Indiegogo.
Look, everybody's entitled to be an idiot.
You play, yeah!